Good morning, everybody. Happy Monday. Hope you guys are doing well. Still waiting on some meaningful action from the Seahawks this offseason. Again, I'm not really expecting a whole lot. The team is much more set than they were last season. The team is a lot more established. We have a pretty good idea of what's going on. There isn't nearly as much mystery. So, again, July looks like it's going to be a relatively slow month in terms of like breaking news. So, to fill the time, we're going to continue on with our prediction series. And in order to try to parse through how we think this team is going to do, we're going to go circumstance by circumstance, position by position, play type by play type, and offer up some guesses on how the team is going to do in 2023. So, we did quarterback play, we did running back play, we did wide receiver play, or receiver play in general. So let's finish up the offense by taking a look at the blocking. How are the blockers going to do? And this one is pretty straightforward. We've got offensive linemen, and then you've also got some tight ends and running backs that do a little bit of blocking as well. Obviously, you got wide receivers that get into the mix as well. I'm not really going to be looking at that. This is primarily a question of how are we going to do in the pass blocking area of football, and how are we going to do also to a certain extent in the run blocking. So we're going to be looking at offensive linemen, and then at the end we're going to do a little bit of tight end and running back, and we'll see how close I end up getting. So this is going to be a little more difficult to gauge with numbers because I think we all understand that the numbers can only go so far in showing how effective a player is when it comes to things like blocking. So I've decided to go ahead and just take a look at four things: penalties, sacks allowed, pressures allowed, and then PFF run block grade. And we'll go from there. Obviously, there are going to be other things that are telling, but for the most part, they're not going to really resolve themselves statistically. It's just going to be a situation where we have to look at it and go, watching the game, it seems like this guy's doing this guy's doing that. But there's also some numbers that we can look at as well. And I do think that last year, the numbers did a pretty good job of telling the story on who was doing their job and who wasn't, who was having a bad game here, who was having a bad game there. So we're gonna take what we can from the numbers here. So we're gonna start with the obviously the offensive line, and we're gonna take a look at all the starters, all the primary starters, and we're also gonna look at a little bit of backup stuff because those guys are going to matter in some capacity for the 2023 season. All right, so the first guy we're going to take a look at here is Charles Cross, the starting left tackle. I think that Cross is going to definitely make some steps forward this year because he was a 21-year-old rookie last season. So if Charles Cross doesn't take significant steps forward this season, that would be shocking. That would be bizarre. 21-year-old rookies do not peak at 21 years old, is what I'm trying to get at here. So Cross should make some steps forward. I don't think it's going to be anything huge. I don't think he's going to be like an all-pro level player this year, but I do think he's going to improve. You look at Cross, one of his worst games of the year in terms of giving up stuff was week 1 against the Broncos when he gave up the 2 sacks to Chubb. And that is obviously has something to do with a player like Chubb being really good, but it also has something to do with Cross playing in his first ever NFL game. Now he's not playing in that first ever NFL game this year. He's not going to have the experience of being completely overwhelmed by a really good NFL veteran the way that he did last season. So penalties, I gave him 6 penalties. I believe he had 7 last season. So small improvement. Left tackles are going to get penalties. It's just part of it. Sacks allowed as a left tackle, I have another small improvement here. I said 5. I think last year was 7. So I think he gets a little bit better. Pressures allowed, I had him getting down to 39. He allowed something like 45 last season. So he gets down to 39 as a left tackle. Now, again, as a left tackle, that means you're protecting the quarterback's blind side, but you're also often not facing the toughest matchup that the other team has to offer. You're not facing off against the Max Crosbys of the world when you're on that left side of the offensive line. So it kind of balances out at the end of the day, and I think his play does go up a level. Run block grade, and again, this one's kind of tough because we often end up disagreeing with what PFF tells us anyway, but I'm going to say he takes a bit of a step up here to above average. I don't think he's going to become a good run blocker yet. I said 65.2, but above average. And last year he was basically average. So that would be a step in the right direction. So I don't think Cross is going to become some all-pro tackle yet. I don't even know if this is like Pro Bowl stuff. But he's going to be good. He's going to improve. Again, it would be beyond bizarre if Charles Cross did not make some steps in the right direction in 2023. So, yeah, I feel pretty comfortable saying that his performance should improve. Now, as for the backup, I don't really have anything. I don't have any reason to believe right now that the backup left tackle, who is probably Stone Forsythe, is going to play meaningful snaps in 2023. If he does, so be it. But I can't really predict that when Cross has been a pretty healthy player for his entire career, as far as I know, in terms of college and NFL play. Okay, next up we're going to go to Damien Lewis. And this guy will probably end up being our best in a vacuum offensive lineman this year because he's in a contract year. I think that's kind of a big deal. Damien Lewis in a contract year. I don't think we're going to extend him right now, although it's on the table. And he's got to know that how he plays this year is going to affect how much money he can make the following year. So Damien Lewis was our best offensive lineman in a vacuum last year. I think he will be that again this year. At left tackle, playing kind of out of position, but not critically so. I said 4 penalties, which is roughly in line with what he did last year. Kind of the same stuff. Not a ton of penalties. He's kind of really become that settled in veteran who doesn't make a lot of mistakes like that. So 4 penalties. And I gave him 2 sacks, which is, I think, 1 less than he had last year. Didn't give up a lot of sacks last season. Really kind of found himself as a pass protector off the left side last year after a not so good 2021. And pressure-wise, I said 14, which is, I think last year he had like 17. So, again, it's a big year for him. This is going to affect his next contract significantly, and he proved himself capable of handling business as a left tackle in pass protection last year, and run blocking as well. So I imagine that stuff is just going to improve. He has an extra year of experience on the left side, which he did not have last year. Last year he just had the 1 year. Now he's got the 2 years. And run blocking, I say he gets to the level of good, 71.5. That's not really good. It's not great, but it's good. It's solid. If he can get up to 71.5 as a run blocker, that would probably be the best on this offensive line. If I had to guess, I would say that, yeah. And I don't really have anything for the backup. The backup left tackle as of right now, honestly, might be Phil Haynes, who is the starting right guard. Logically speaking, if Lewis gets hurt, it would probably be somebody else. Like maybe it's Jake Curhan. Maybe we throw Bradford in. I don't know. But I'm not really going to go into how I think that player is going to play. I don't even know who he is, and I don't know if he's going to get to seriously play. So we'll just look at that for the Damien Lewis, the left guard. Now let's move on to center here. I do still have Evan Brown as our starting center. I think he will probably play the whole season, at the very least most of it. I do not think, as much as I do like Oluwatimi, I'm not convinced that Oluwatimi is going to do enough this season to get the starting job away from Evan Brown, who played very well last time he was playing center full time. So I'm just going to go ahead and say that right now. So you take a look at what Evan Brown did a couple years ago when he was the starting center for the Lions, which was the best football that he played. I gave him 5 penalties. You're a center. You're going to rack up the occasional penalty. You're going to have some, illegal snaps. You're going to have some false starts that are on your head, but nothing critical. And I gave him 2 sacks allowed. Last time he played center for the Lions, he was really good in pass protection. He's going to be surrounded by some pretty good players around him. There's going to be 1 weak spot on this offensive line, really, I think. So I think that's a pretty reasonable expectation. And I said 11 pressures. Good centers, even like decent centers, really don't give up a whole lot in terms of pressure stuff because they're typically double team blocking. They're typically blocking one techs. These are not guys that get a lot of pressures. So I think that Evan Brown allowing 11 pressures is pretty pretty reasonable. Run block grade, I went with a grade that is good, not great. Somewhere between above average to good, 67.2. I don't think he'll be a killer in this area, but I think he'll be good enough for us to get through the season and feel like we made a significant upgrade over Austin Blythe. That's kind of the thing I keep hanging my hat on here. There's no way whoever starts at center for us this year, it's not going to be worse than Blythe. And again, I don't have any meaningful snaps being played by the backup center. I don't see any reason to believe that Evan Brown is made of glass. I don't see any reason to believe that he's going to play bad enough to get benched for a rookie. So I'm just going to go with these numbers for now. This next guy, on the other hand, maybe you could say is at least he's 30% made of glass. There's some glass in that body. Phil Haynes, currently the starting right guard. He's got to be the weak spot on this offensive line, and that's obviously a little disappointing because, as we all know, right guards typically are blocking against one-techs, which mean you should have the easiest time preventing pressure, and yet that's not how things went last year. In fact, if you combined Gabe Jackson and Phil Haynes last year, they averaged like 3 pressures allowed per game. And given the fact that they're going up against 3-techs most of the time, that's not okay. I do think Haynes will be a little better because he'll have better teammates around him, but I don't think he'll be good. Maybe he'll be passable. I gave him 7 penalties. He had a lot of penalties last year. That would actually still be an improvement, and obviously we wouldn't feel great about that. I said 5 sacks allowed. So for a right guard, that is, again, not really what you're looking for, especially when you combine it with 34 pressures. By the way, that would still be less than he allowed last year, according to PFF. So basically what I'm trying to say is here that the bar is really low for Haynes to improve. And then as a run blocker, I do think he'll be passable. I said 61.1. That's average. That's workable. I do want to stress this, though, real quick with Phil Haynes. I do think he's playing out of position, and I do think that's a big part of the reason why he's having problems. And for what it's worth, this is a guy who I think will probably miss a game or two. It's Phil Haynes. He typically doesn't stay healthy for a 17-game season. So I decided to say, let's say Anthony Bradford gets a little bit of action. And I don't feel great about that because he had so little college experience, but let's go with it. I said he plays in a couple games. I gave him 1 penalty. I gave him 2 sacks allowed. That right guard position's just going to be a problem this year. I said 8 pressures allowed, maybe over the course of 2.5, 3 games. And a run block rate of 51.1. So well below average, but reasonable for a rookie who is starting or playing in games well before he should be. All right, right tackle now. Now we're getting back to the fun stuff. Abe Lucas, one of the most exciting young players on this team for a lot of people. He played well last year. I think he'll improve this season. Penalties, I said 5. You're going to have some penalties. You're going to be playing games on the road against loud crowds. You're going to be in difficult situations against the elite of the elite pass rushers in this league, like Bosa, not this year, but the Max Crosbys of the world. You're going to be dealing with the elite speed rushers. You're going to have some penalties. I said he's going to allow 5 sacks. So a lot of guys on this offensive. So recurring numbers here, I guess you could say either 5 sacks or 2 sacks allowed for every offensive lineman. Pressures allowed, I went with 26, which would be a nice improvement over last year. Again, this guy was a rookie last year. He was 23, but he was a rookie. Reasonable to expect him to get better. Run block grade, I say he steps up a little bit to 72.1. And you've got a really good, bordering on great right tackle at this point. Like maybe not Pro Bowl, but close. So if he can get to this level, I think that's really good. And then down here, we have nothing really from the backup. I don't see any reason to believe that Abe Lucas is going to miss games, so I'm not really going to go into that specifically. And that's it for the offensive line guys. Let's take a look at some of the other positions. This is going to be a little bit shorter, but we're going to look at some tight end stuff here. We got Noah Fant. He's going to get involved in blocking a little bit. Not a ton, though. I don't think you're going to see a ton of stuff from him. I had 2 penalties. I had 0 sacks allowed, which is what he allowed last year. 4 pressures. Last year he allowed 5, but I think he's going to play a little bit less this year because of the addition of JSN. Run block grade is going to be passable, but not good, 55.1. Little bit better than it was last year. I think he'll be run blocking a little bit less, which might make life a little bit easier for him, but basically the same thing. And then you've also got Will Dissly as the backup tight end. He's going to be the guy who blocks more because that's his role. I have one penalty for him. He's kind of settled in as that veteran who's really good at just kind of playing within himself. 0 sacks allowed, same as last year. 4 pressures allowed, same as last year. Run block grade is going to be nice, 66.9. He's proven himself as being a capable run blocker. So I imagine that'll continue. He'll just grind out a solid, respectable, but not over the top season. All right, now let's take a look at some of these running backs. We got Ken Walker, the starting primary running back. He's going to be doing some blocking as well. Not a ton, but enough to make an impact on this team. He had some issues in this area last year for sure. He should take a step up this season just because of experience, just because of familiarity. I gave him the 1 penalty. I think that he'll at some point this season have a penalty. Running backs typically don't have many. I also said he's going to allow 1 sack, and he's going to allow 9 pressures. He's going to get more reps, I think, as a pass protector this year. So that number is going to go up a little bit. Run blocking, I mean, we're not going to use him as a run blocker very much. Like, why would you? But the grade's not going to be good. It was even worse last year, 42.5. But it's not going to be enough plays to be significant. Charbonnet is your backup running back. I got him with 2 penalties. He's a rookie. He's going to make some mistakes, just like K9 did. He's going to allow 1 sack, and he's going to allow 7 pressures. I think he's going to be a bit of a better protector than Walker, but I do think that as a rookie, he's going to make more obvious mistakes just because of lack of experience. Run block grade, I gave him a 54.2, but again, I don't think he'll be run blocking enough to really matter. It's just going to be kind of almost a random number based off the handful of plays he's actually a run blocker. And that gets you to your totals. So let's go ahead and take a look at the totals. Keep in mind that the number of total sacks and pressures listed is not the actual number of times Gino will get sacked and pressured, because a lot of sacks and pressures do not get attributed to any one player on the offensive line or blocking scheme in general. So understand that just because I'm saying that if you add up all these sacks, it equals up to 23. Gino's going to get sacked more than 23 times. But a lot of those sacks are going to be on blitzes where nobody's really responsible. They're not really going to attribute the sack or the pressure to a particular player. So Gino's definitely going to get pressured more. This would basically be, 9 times a game. He's going to get pressured more than that, for sure. 100%. But some of those pressures are not really going to be credited to any one player. That's especially with PFF's grading system, that's how it works. So those are my best guesses for the offensive linemen and the other blockers on this offense, the other key blockers. Let me know what you guys think about all this. Do you think I'm close? Do you think I'm in good territory here? I'll see you guys later. Go Hawks.